and then he gave the church to the family. So we don't want to lose our families because we're so caught up in the church, and we neglect our families, we neglect our wives. Your ministry to your family is first, not to go and preach here and preach there and be famous and get a reputation, be a celebrity. God didn't call you for all of that. First of all, he called you to be a minister in your home to your family. You can't be a minister outside your family until you minister at home first. You can't leave your family at home all distraught and falling apart, and children are confused, and your wife is angry, and you don't spend any time with them because they will resent the church. So, first ministry is at home, and then the church. You find some children don't even want to go to church because they don't get any time from dad. So dads, you need to stand in the gap for your children. Listen to your children. Talk to your children. There's too many people sitting around the table, if they do sit around the table anymore, and with cell phones, computers, and fast foods. Those kind of things are taken away from the family. But do families sit around the dinner table anymore? If they do, everyone is probably at the table on the phone. Dad's on the phone, mom's on the phone, the children on the phone, and there's no communication. There's no exchanging of information. There's no connection. In the same room, at the same table, eating the same food, and there's no connection. That is why a lot of times mom and dad don't find out until everybody else knows, because there's no communication. If there's no communication, there is no relationship. If there's no exchange of information, then you won't know what your children are going through, and they may be on the verge of suicide. You wouldn't know it. They may be being bullied. You wouldn't know it because there is no communication. Things and gadgets and social media has taken over, and the family ties are steady drifting away, and that's becoming more and more of a gap between dad and the children, mom and the children, children, mom and dad. We need to get back to standing in the gap for our families so that we can reconnect. You won't even know your daughter's pregnant until she starts showing. Why? There is no communication. There's no exchange of information. And it's a shame that you find sometimes some of the stuff that's going on in the world, it's going on in the church. Daughter pregnant in the church and gets pregnant. Now, but we should be the first ones to know of these things are happening. We should be there interceding for our children that the daughter don't get pregnant and your son don't get somebody pregnant, because we're interceding for them and we're talking to them. We are communicating. Now, the devil is communicating with our children. We are talking less to our children. And the devil is talking more. Somebody, something is going to have our children's ear. God needs a feel-good man. You know how they used to have this commercial that Uncle Sam needs a few good men? But God needs a few good men today, somebody that will stand in the gap today. In a world filled with violence and things that violate God's word, in the home, in the community, in the government. We need to pray and stand in the gap for this nation, for the communities, for government, because the devil is working everywhere. People are calling right wrong and wrong right, all the way to the White House. But right is still right, and wrong is still wrong. So we need somebody standing in the gap that we can continue to declare and to preach that right is right and wrong is wrong. We need somebody, God needs somebody that's going to stand in the gap. God needs a remnant, a residue of holy men that will stand in the gap. The saying went out that Black Lives Matters. And it just meant that Black lives matter also. But there is a gap, there is a disparity. And so people have to cry out so that people understand that Black lives matter also. Well, souls matter also. Now, in the book of Ezekiel, see, eventually, we're all going to die. There is a part of us that will live on forever. Now, Ezekiel 18:4 says, "Behold, all souls are mine. As the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The soul that sinneth, it shall die." Now God said all souls are mine. It doesn't matter. Souls don't have colors. Souls is just the soul of man. You are three parts. You are body, soul, and spirit. The word soul is used interchangeably. And in the Old Testament, he's using it as the spiritual part of man. And so he says, all souls belong to me. But it also lets us know that if you are a sinner, you will die in your sin. And we need to stand in the gap and declare to all mankind. We need to stand on the housetop, wherever you can, and declare that sin is still wrong, and sin will still take you to hell, but you need to be born again. Sin is rampant. It's everywhere. All you have to do is look on the television and you will see the devastation of sin. God did not bring sin into this world. Adam brought sin into this world. When God made Adam and Eve, they were perfect. There was no sin. So all the devastation that you see in the world today, even nature, is affected by sin. Stop accusing God of being evil and that God caused these things to happen. Sin caused these things to happen. Sin caused people to be suffering. Well, you might say, well, why is my son suffering or my family suffering? God's son suffered. God's son was abused and beat and spit on and ridiculed. God's Son was beaten worse than any man. He was beaten with a whip that had pieces of sharp bone in it, pieces of metal in it, and they beat him mercilessly. They beat him to the point to where some men would have gone into cardiac arrest and died. But Jesus was not going to die like that, because he said, "No man taketh my life, but I lay it down and have power to take it again." And after they beat him so bad, they nailed him to the cross, and he died. So while you're thinking about your son, your family suffering, God's Son suffered, and he was totally innocent, had no sin, was not connected with sin whatsoever. He was dying for sin. So see, it was not God that's causing all this disaster in the world today, and the hurt and the pain in the world today. It comes from the sin that Adam committed. Alfonso Coble at sbcglobal.net